Let's talk about Olamic Cutlery's Soloist. This company and knife maker is amazing when it comes to customization options for their handle materials, blade shapes, blade finishes, inlay options, and hardware. Their motto is never the same, and that really is the case. So let's get into it. You can find all the knife specs in the video description below. Let's take a look at some size comparisons for some everyday carry options. Looking at the Benchmade Bug Out and the Civivi Praxis. Looking at the Demco 20.5 and the Kaiser Sheepdog. Now to compare against some larger knives, the Cold Steel 4MAX Scout, Medford's Praetorian, and lastly, Medford's USMC Fighter and the Hogue X5. As you can see, this is a big knife, or rather it's a long knife. So the packaging comes in this case with a COA along with some custom tools to manage some of their proprietary hardware, which we'll talk about in a minute. In regard to materials, this blade is an M390, which I have zero problems with. And the blade shape is called the Agent. It also comes in what's called the Scout. The Scout is arguably the better blade shape in my opinion. It's got better cutting geometry, more suited for slicing. This is definitely a more stabby, pointy, piercing type of blade, but I do think it looks much better than the Scout. The Scout kind of reminds me of like the bill on a bird. I really enjoy this gorgeous, highly reflective satin finish that they worked into this blade. It's got a solid lockup, absolutely zero play in any direction, up or down. Looking at the lock face here for a moment, looks like we're solidly locked up at around 33%. Flipper tab is beautifully milled. It's crowned and it's polished. Feels fantastic. It's got a little bit of jimping here in the end too. You will never misfire engagement with this knife. The flipper tab is absolutely amazing. The interesting though is when you look at the top of the knife, it's very sharp, and you know, this is crowned and milled nicely. This could have used, I don't know, maybe some jimping or equal sort of this crowned and polished treatment would have been really nice up here. But as it stands, it just feels unfinished. It's a little sharp. You know, this feels so soft and smooth, but this is sharp. Some of the really interesting things is you'll notice there are no visible stop pins. Like, you know, usually there's a stop pin here. And what I noticed is when you look at the blade itself, they're built into, I don't know if you can see it. You can barely see it. You see those stop pins right there on the left and right? Those travel along a groove inside the scales, and then they stop where they're milled to stop. I thought that was really interesting. I don't have a knife that does that. Moving on to the handle. Olamic calls this the Entropic Antiqued Titanium Handle Acid Rain. Just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? These holes provide really good traction when you grab it. They feel great. They don't feel rough. Some of them are not. Some of these are chamfered nicely, but others are not. But these small ones don't catch your finger. Feels really good. The other thing I really appreciate is the this lock bar This has been chamfered, knocked down, so it's smooth. You know, on other knives, this can be sharp, and it's smooth here as well. It's really nice. These attention to detail. Also an over travel stop right there, which is very much appreciated. There's serial number inside the backspacer on the inside. Speaking of the backspacer, this is a floating backspacer. What I mean by that is there's a gap. It's really cool. I really love the look of this rock type of backspacer. And the fact that it's floating is just a really nice touch. Pocket clip. Let's talk about the pocket clip. It's not deep carry. It's not shallow. It's middle. Like it'll sit about this high. I think it's ugly. It's just got a really weird shape. I wish it was 3D milled with a more organic kind of shape. I don't really care for these standoffs either. I think it would just look much better if it was milled and just sort of built into the knife, or look like it was built into the knife, right? Sort of like this Kaiser sheepdog, right? I like that sort of one piece, like it's like the design of the clip is integrated into the handle itself. You know, that said, all that said, it holds in the pocket securely, and it sits very, very well in hand. Looking at hardware, we got T6s all around, T6s, and here's the proprietary screw. And that's where this wrench, this Olamic wrench, is used to tighten and loosen the pivot. And you can also use this to tighten and loosen this thumb stud as well. So that's the other thing that's really cool is this thumb stud is adjustable. You can rock it and move it back and forth. You can choose to have this textured piece on this side. You can flip it for left hand or right hand use. Pretty awesome. I've never seen this before. I love the fact that you can move it up and down. I chose to push it all the way in front just because it gives me more options for actuating and deploying the blade. So, aesthetics. I think it's stunning. I think it looks absolutely amazing. You know, the contrast between the etched and distressed blade against the highly reflective and pristine satin finish just makes it look super classy and elegant. I still can't get over how good this handle looks. It looks all rusted and aged, and then this blade looks so clean and untouched. So fit and finish is impeccable and beyond reproach. You know, tolerances feel super tight. And there's this sort of unmistakable air of just quality that just surrounds this knife. It's also extremely efficient in terms of blade and handle length ratio. Like if you look at this blade goes all the way to the tip. There's no wasted real estate on this knife. Action, silky smooth, perfectly tuned to 10. You know, despite this super long blade, it feels nimble when using all the different types of deployment, right? Like when you're using spidey flick, reverse flick, right? Using the thumb. You can slow roll it. I personally prefer, using the reverse flick. Feels fantastic. Or the thumb. Flipper feels fantastic as well. I mean, there's so many different ways to kind of play with this. You know, this is not a fidget toy, you know, right, by any stretch of the imagination. But, you know, when I get it in hand, I just end up playing with it over and over, and I don't want to put it down. And that's so awesome. Like, I love that about this knife. That's not, I don't know, I don't think it was, you would think something this large with over a 4-inch, almost a 4 1/4-inch blade would not be something that you just want to play with over and over, but it's fantastic. Ergonomics, yeah, amazing. They match the looks, right? Perfect ergonomics with the clip despite how ugly it is, it just disappears into the hand. Like it just clamp down. You bear down on this grip and you cannot feel any hot spots. It's amazing. It's amazing. My hand is one with these scales. The other thing I will say, it would have been really nice for such a long blade to get a finger choil, right? To kind of choke up for some push cuts. I could see how that would ruin the aesthetics and the lines of the blade, but I don't know. For such a long blade, I feel like it could really use, yeah. But then again, you don't have any support back here too. It's really slippery, so you can kind of, I don't know. This is not a choil, not a finger choil, but it would have been nice. It would have been nice. Recommendations and final thoughts. The Soloist, man, this knife. Soloist comes highly recommended in any blade or cosmetic configuration. It's an amazing, amazing conversation piece. And it just oozes character. It oozes charm. It's so clear the love and care that went to its creation. I think anyone would be proud to own this. It's stunning. It's such an amazing thing to just whip out and talk about with your friends, and it just gets a lot of attention. What I don't like, well, we talked about pocket clip. I think we've said enough there. Also the nitpick about the top. It just feels unfinished. It's really sharp and there's no jimping, and it's so beautifully crowned and milled here with jimping, but it just feels unfinished. Like I wish they would have crowned this or put some jimping here to give it some utility with push cuts. The other thing too is this thumb stud, as awesome as it is, that you can move it around, it gets in the way. I noticed that when I was breaking down boxes, sometimes this stud would get caught up, as I would push cut through boxes. Again, this is not really the knife to be breaking down all your subscribe and save boxes, but it's not a great slicer either. But I don't know. I just noticed that this is something that does get in the way. But the solution, I think, would be to remove this thumb stud, and you could still actuate it and deploy it in every way, except the only thing you couldn't do is the thumb deployment, right? But everything else you could do. You can do the reverse flick. Reverse flick, right? It's just you can't do the thumb flick anymore. So that's it, guys. I love this knife. It's one of my absolute favorites. It's a grail in my collection. I'll never sell it. It'll be something I enjoy all the time. Doesn't have as much utility as the Scout blade shape, but don't really care because it looks amazing and it feels amazing, and I love to play with it. So comes highly, highly recommended. You would certainly enjoy it. So that wraps up my review. Thanks for joining me. Hope you all have a wonderful day.